I forced my friends to finish the Wingspan scorecard booklet to figure out who the best player is, what the best strategy is, and how many of them would never talk to me again. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, Wingspan is a bird board game where you try to set up a flock of birds on your bird board and try to have the most points by the end of the game. The game is known as an engine building game. Over the course of the game, each player will build their own engine, each trying to create the most efficient engine to accumulate points. The Wingspan board is set up with 3 lanes: the food lane, the egg lane, and the card lane. You need food and eggs to play your birds down, and you need cards because they are the birds that you use to build your board. As you play more birds on each lane, that lane will become better. So, for example, right now, if I were to use the egg lane, I would get 2 eggs. But if I were to put 2 birds in here, now I get 3 eggs. Additionally, each bird has a unique ability that you activate when you activate that lane. The 3 lanes act as 3 different cogs in your engine. Each turn, you activate one of them to activate the effects that you've placed down. With a limited amount of turns, each player needs to figure out which lane or lanes they will build and use to generate points. Now, I made my friends completely fill out this scorecard booklet. So let's figure out which strategy ended up winning the most.
Hello, everybody. This is just Weston, and this is my Google Sheet for the Wingspan results. On the vertical axis here, it is which game was played. On the x-axis, it is which player played the games or got what scores. Now, I used fake names for every single one of these categories, and additionally, one name, for example, Larry here, might be multiple players. So if I have 3 different friends whose names are like Lisa, Luciano, and Larry, all 3 of them will be in this Larry category. All right. So now that that's taken care of, let's just talk about some of these facts real quick. I know a bunch of data isn't super interesting. This grid is colored where the lowest scores will show red and some of the highest scores will be bright green. That's pretty much how it works. There's a total of 51 games. And yeah. So let us now dive into the results. There's 2 most common players, which are me, Winston, and the owner of the board game, Kelly. We played the most games, and so ours are filled out much more, while some of the least common ones, you only have a few results here and there. Some interesting scores that came out is in game 15, we had the closest scoring game, where the highest score was 79, and then the 2 other scores were 76, leaving a 3-point difference between winner and loser. In game 19, we had a tiebreaker. It's the only tiebreak that we had to do. 2 players tied for first, and so the tiebreaker ends up going to whoever had the most food, which was Perry. In game 22, we had the lowest average scoring game, with 70 points, 52 points, and 66 points, with an average score of 63 between the 3 players. And over here in game 38, we had the highest average score game with 99, 111, 95, and 90. Some star players would be Copper, who got the 2 lowest scores. He's the only player to get below 50 points, and he did it twice. And one distinction between me and Kelly, Kelly's scores have a bigger variance. So they have some higher score games than I do, but they also have a lot of more yellow scores than I do, and mine are more consistent, and we'll see that down at the bottom. So let's do a quick little scroll. Boom. 51 games. Now here is some of the more standout statistics that I just wanted to give for all players. Lowest score is up first, as we see Copper leading that charge. And here is my lowest score which was one of the last games that we played, so it's pretty sad that that brings down my reputation a bunch. But nothing super interesting in the lowest score, and of course some of the players who played very little amount of games, some of these stats might be skewed. Highest score, Kelly with the highest score out of all, 125, Larry 120, Sam 115, I have 111. Average score is much more interesting though. It gives a better showcase of a player's potential. Barry doing pretty good with 81, 79 with Kelly, Winston and Sam 83 and 82. The lowest average would technically be Diane, who only played one game, so that's not really fair to them. Then the next lowest would be Harriet, played 6 games, 65, so Harriet is just kind of bad. No hate to Harriet though, sorry. Total games played, well first, total players played, we had 51 total games, 197. I did not do the math beforehand. We had 3.862 players in most of the games, so that's the average amount of players that we had, and that makes sense. We don't really want to play 2-player games. It can be kind of boring, but 5-player games can take quite a bit long time. 3 to 4 players is where we usually played. This is how many total games each player played. As you can see, Winston and Kelly, we did the most games out of anybody. We love this game and always get other friends to play it with us. Other than that, Hubert, Larry, Alvin are the next 3 highest, and Perry, Rhonda, Jake. Oh, I forgot about Jake. Most people played a decent amount of games, but there are 3 players who only played 1, 3, and 3. Next is total wins. The highest is, of course, me. And also, there is a couple other people whose name starts with W that are in this list, but most of these 42 games were me, so I'm going to brag about it. 20 games won. 11 games won for Kelly, which is also quite good. 5, 2, 2, 2, 1. Slightly more revealing of information than just total wins is the win percentage, so your average win rate. And Kelly had a pretty good average win rate if we're assuming that most games have 3 to 4 players. 23%, about 25% would be what you would want. And so Kelly's a very good player. They play very well. They come up with interesting strategies. Next, the highest by far is me, 47.6%. And since this is a very large sample size, I played 42 out of 51 games. Or no, W played 42 out of 51 games. I'd say that's probably just because I'm pretty good at board games. And so to any of my friends who target me when we're playing a board game, you're absolutely right. You should target me because I'm pretty good. Some of the more weird anomalies, though, would be Sam, 7 games, 3 wins. Also Larry, 12 games and 5 wins. Also a very good amount. So either these 2 players are really good, or I'd say in Sam's case, maybe they just won 3 games. And if they played more, they might lose more. But who can tell? We can't tell. Biggest loser has to be Harriet. Again, sorry, Harriet. You played 6 times and won 0. Copper only won 1 out of their 9 games. But, hey, at least they're on the board. Am I right? Their average is pretty good. And so for a high average points, but a low average win, must mean they're just playing against good players. An additional stat I was going to show was I was going to take every single winner and figure out where most of their points came from in any game. But it would be pretty skewed in favor of birds, because birds, like everybody is playing birds, and so everybody's going for that strategy. And so I figured that statistic would not really give any information about the best strategy to win the game. Speaking of, I will now go over the highest value points in each individual category. Some fun little stats. Here's the highest average points. Sam with first place, Winston with second, Barry with third. Notice how Winston has way more games, so it's probably a better average, or more accurate. Here's the highest point games. Kelly with 125, Larry with 120, and Sam with 115. Note that Kelly also had a score of 120 in a second game, but I don't want to inflate their ego, so I only put them on once. Here's the least games played. Just a handful of people only played a couple of times, and that's perfectly fine. So this table shows all of the different ways that you can score points, and it shows which player got the highest total in that category. It also describes which game it is. Now, the 6 categories. First one is birds. Everybody plays birds, and so every single player in every single game will get points in this category. And there's a high variance in degree, but usually it's the highest scoring point value in any of the categories. Next, bonus cards. Every single player gets their own secret objective to work towards, and how well you accomplish that goal determines how many points you get from this category. You can usually get a fair bit, but usually not as many points as Larry got. The end of round goals is every single round. There's 4 rounds in the game. Every single round there's an objective that every single player knows about, and each player is working towards it, and whoever does the best in that objective gets the points. Eggs. The amount of eggs that you have on your birds at the end of the game are each worth 1 point. It is very easy to get points in this category. In your last few rounds of the game, going for eggs is an easy answer and can very easily be the best way to go. The last 2 categories are food on cards and tucked cards. Both of these are high risk to go for. You generally don't get high amounts of points from these 2 categories, but it's a little extra bit of points if you happened to get them on the way. I will say that in both of these 2 games, so Winston in Game 40 and Copper in Game 16, those 2 players did not win their respective games. They focused too much on this one category, and their points were lacking in the others, which is what I will explain now. The 3 categories that are green are easy categories to get points in that you don't really need to focus on, but if you do focus on it, your points will go up drastically. The red categories are low scoring categories, but they generally give you better rewards during the game to plan your future. And so you don't get many points at the end, but you get a lot of benefit during the game to create a better engine. And the yellow category, the end of round goals, that is a unique category because there is a limited amount of points that the entire table can get. And so if I take first place in every single round, all of the other players get far less points from the end of round goals. And so you're stealing points away from others by going for this category. And so while you don't get high point values, you reduce your opponent's point values by going for this. And so overall, my message for playing this game as strategically as possible is to make sure that you are competing for the end of round goals while focusing on getting high value birds and completing your bonus card goals. And then the other 3 categories of eggs, food on cards, and tucked cards, you will get naturally as you play the game. Or maybe you won't. It depends on what cards you draw. Overall, that's what I would say. That's the results of my Wingspan gameplay. I hope you've enjoyed this game if you like Wingspan, and if you don't like Wingspan, I have no idea why you finished this video. But thank you regardless of why you watched this video. Have a nice day. I hope you enjoyed. Go touch some grass. Subscribe.